Hello and welcome to Paul on Politics, our review of all the week's political news live on KMTV. On this programme we'll be asking if UKIP has had its day and if a council ban on single-use plastic bottles and straws is more than a token gesture. Our guests are Mike Baldock, UKIP councillor in SWALE, along with Rocger Truelove, a Labour councillor from the same area. Thanks for joining us. First, thousands of patients could be left without a GP surgery to go to under a threat to close a village practice near Tonbridge. And opposition to plans for a quarry close to protected land near West Malling are growing. Poppy Jeffrey is with Tonbridge and Malling MP Tom Tugendhat now to discuss what can be done. Poppy.
Hiya, thank you. Yes, I'm here in the constituency office here of Tonbridge and Malling MP Tom Tugendhat, and obviously there are quite a few issues that we're here to discuss. So, Tom, obviously some big stories recently. Obviously the first one, West Malling GP practice, it's going to affect around 19,000 patients. What do you make of the news that it's under offer, as we believe?
Well, look, this is part of a reorganisation of services in the West Malling area, and what we're trying to do is to get better services from the three existing properties. So as you know, there's one on the High Street in West Malling, that's the one that's supposedly under offer. There's one in Leybourne, and there's another one in Kings Hill. Most people are using the Kings Hill surgery for obvious reasons. It's got parking, it's more people live in that area. And so we're looking to put more investment there and into Leybourne. And I very much hope that this will be done while at the same time maintaining the high street presence that the GPs have promised to do. So that's what I've been talking to people about this morning. In fact, I was speaking to the patients' representative group only this morning about exactly that and how we make sure that we maintain services on the high street in West Malling at the same time as improving on the other two sites.
Fantastic. And how important is it that this problem is solved for constituents?
Well, look, having access to a GP is absolutely fundamental for everybody. I mean, for me, for you, for everybody who's watching, it is an absolutely essential element of having services available to us as citizens. And so it's something I spend a lot of time doing, actually, particularly in rural areas where there are particular challenges because of distance, because of mobility. And so maintaining that access is essential.
Fantastic. So obviously we're going to move down a road a little bit now to Rocger.
Yes.
The possibility of a quarry, millions of tonnes of sand. Why have you in particular decided to speak up against the KCC proposals?
Well, what I've done actually is I've highlighted the issue and so that I can allow other people to be aware of what's happening on their doorstep. As you will be aware, my powers do not extend to planning. This is not within the authority of a Member of Parliament. It's a KCC matter, it's a council matter, a local government matter, quite rightly. But it's an important matter, and part of my role as a local Member of Parliament is to make sure people are aware. And so that's what I've done. I've highlighted awareness, and I urge people to go to the parish meeting in Rocger on Monday evening and to make their voice heard, because this is going to clearly affect many, many people. There's a consultation about this, quite rightly, and Kent County Council are listening. So please do go to Rocger, go to the parish council on Monday evening and make sure your voice is heard.
Fantastic. And what are some of the things people have been saying about it? Are they really concerned? What are the main concerns from people?
Well, there's a range of concerns, and the range of concerns include things like the increase in traffic in the area, the increase in noise and air pollution from dust and other sort of works traffic, as you would expect. And then there's the concern about the countryside, of course, because once the quarry has been dug, restoring the land, which is part of the commitment, it's not always done to the best standards. Now, there are some very, very good restorers in the area. Actually, there's a firm called Gallagher's, which is a quarrier in the area, who are fantastic and who've done really impressive work in restoring land to pristine condition, so you would never even know there was a quarry underneath you, or rather there had been a quarry underneath you. And there are others which are less good.
Brilliant. That's really helpful. So lastly, we'll have a look at some national and international issues. Boris Johnson has made the news recently. Some are calling his latest news stories a bit of a leadership bid. What do you think about that? Well,
I think he's got he's a man who's got a habit for these sort of things, and I don't think he can hold himself back. But I mean, it's not really surprising that Boris makes news for the odd things he says, is it?
Of course. Any lasting impressions that these stories have made on you at all?
No, look, I'm not. I mean, you will know my views on the Foreign Secretary. I've made them pretty clear on various occasions. I think that foreign policy is a very serious business. I think it's something that's got to be done deliberately and carefully and with forethought. And I think that flip remarks and accidental comments are not entirely helpful when we're dealing with complex international situations that require consideration.
Well, thank you very much for joining us, Tom, and thank you.
It's a huge pleasure.
Now, UKIP has had another turbulent week and the party remains engulfed in a row about not just one of its leaders, but two. In something of a bizarre twist, we've been treated to one UKIP leader facing calls to quit, calling for another UKIP leader facing calls to quit. National Party leader Henry Bolton took aim at the Thanet Council UKIP leader Chris Wells, saying he should go after reneging on a pledge to reopen Manston Airport. Mr Bolton himself was under pressure, but announced that he would not be standing down in spite of senior party officials passing a vote of no confidence in him. Here's what he had to say about his fight back from his Folkestone home.
I shall respect the next steps in the constitutional process and will therefore not be resigning as party leader. I shall repeat, I will not be resigning as party leader. Instead, during the next 4 weeks, I shall be calling for the coordination and mobilisation of all Leave campaigns to ensure that the government delivers full independence from the European Union in all areas of government and administration. And I shall be calling for the party itself to mobilise in order to support that effort.
Well, Mike Baldock, the events around UKIP have been a bit like a soap opera in recent weeks. Now it's descended into farce, hasn't it, with one leader attacking another leader?
You could certainly say tragedy. I think that Henry has quite a valid point when he says that people do feel let down about Manston and the local plan. The council is responsible for the local plan. They didn't have to put Manston in that local plan for housing. They could have found alternative sites, and I think people are understandably feel betrayed that it was in the local plan.
But at the same time, one party leader attacking another party leader does seem a bit odd. It doesn't give an impression of unity or harmony within UKIP.
UKIP's always been a bit different to the other parties.
Very different.
Very different. And we don't follow the diktat. One person says something and everybody jumps. We can have discussions, we can have fallouts, and sometimes we have agreements.
Now, you're backing Henry Bolton to remain as leader. Why? Why is he the right person? And are you not worried about some of the backstory that's emerged in recent weeks?
Oh, there's backstory about every politician if you look.
But it does raise questions about his judgment for some people.
It does for some people. We don't know exactly what he's been charged with. It's this very broad...
He's not been charged with anything.
No, from the party. Been charged with bringing the party into disrepute. He's been charged with bringing the party into disrepute by the NEC, but no details, specifics why. I think that he's got the right vision to take the party on, make us relevant again in politics, and continue to be that voice that unites people across the spectrum without fitting into any specific ideology.
Rocger, what do you make of it? I must imagine you're privately rubbing your hands and saying this is the implosion of UKIP that you've waited so long for.
The first thing, Paul, is I'm absolutely mystified why you and the rest of the media give so much attention to this here today, gone tomorrow political party. Henry Bolton seems to me to lack any authority in his party. I know they like to vilify each other in public, but the vehemence of the attack on him from members of the NEC suggests that his support in the first place was pretty shallow.
I know you're saying that we're obsessed with him, with the party, but at the same time, it was in its heyday a very powerful party. It brought about the referendum. You can't just dismiss them like that, surely.
No, but I think people understand that period has passed. The argument that the country is now having is not on whether we have a referendum and whether we leave the European Union, but the nature of the settlement we have with Europe over the economy. And that argument is being played out so intensely within the Conservative cabinet that nobody needs UKIP to make the case for what might be regarded as the hard Brexit side. That's in the cabinet, and also you've got that side of the cabinet that wants to preserve our economic strength.
Well, you've moved on to another party's territory. I want to bring you back to UKIP. What about these reports that Nigel Farage is considering setting up a kind of a UKIP Mark II version of the party?
I think that UKIP's got a new crusade. It's got to. It's done what it's done on the EU. It achieved what nobody thought would be possible and got us a referendum. But now we've got...
Why not quit on a high? That's what I'm thinking.
Because that hasn't really tackled the secrecy, the elitism and the lack of accountability in politics in this country. It's got rid of the EU element of it, but town halls up and down the country are not listening to people they represent, and that's got to be our next crusade.
Well, a lot of people are saying they're not listening to UKIP because Nigel Farage isn't there anymore. Is there a place for him to come back again? Do you envisage?
Nigel will always be an electric speaker that attracts attention, but he's got no interest in going through the day-to-day grime of running a party again. Why would he?
I'm very interested in Mike's definition of the new role for UKIP, and it very much reflects his view, which is sort of big libertarian mission to beat secrecy and all those sort of things. But that isn't peculiar to UKIP. That isn't why most people vote UKIP. They voted UKIP because they wanted a referendum and they've had it.
Are you finding on the street that there are people who voted UKIP and are coming back to you? Or
yes.
I don't know you're bound to say yes.
You would expect me to say that, but of course that is happening. And it's reflected in the elections. And the elections in Kent at local level, we've seen a big collapse in the UKIP vote, and clearly some of it has come to us. And it was always a misconception that that people voting UKIP were ex-Conservatives.
We've got to move on. When we come back, is one Kent Council's pledge to ban single-use plastic bottles and straws just a token gesture? And Labour Party chiefs visit the Port of Dover. Don't go away. Welcome back to Paul on Politics with guests Mike Baldock and Rocger Truelove. Now, this week, Medway Council decided that it would be banning single-use plastic bottles in response to growing concerns about their impact on the environment. But is it just a small gesture or something more significant?
It's not the decision that I would have wanted. I was hopeful that the council would be able to phase out single-use plastics within 6 months. That's now not going to happen, but at least we've got that cross-party support that the Medway Council will lead by example, and that at some stage in the future this will be implemented, and that's only good for the environment. It's not where we wanted to be, but it's an improvement on where we were yesterday.
Mike Baldock, this seems a sensible move.
It does.
Could also be seen as a bit of opportunism, but Labour's to be commended for getting Medway Council to sign up to this.
Oh, absolutely, yes. I mean, it's easy to dismiss things as gesture politics, but if you don't take a stance, nothing's ever going to change. On SWALE recently, we voted to ban the balloons, the festival balloons. I think these things reflect a growing awareness that our environment is being polluted and we've got to do something about it. And if the government won't, it's up to us on local councils to start getting that message heard.
Rocger Truelove, it's been called the Blue Planet effect, hasn't it, really? But, do you see merit in these kinds of
well, absolutely.
policy decisions? I mean, I don't know how many plastic bottles Medway Council uses.
No, that's not really the point. Blue Planet has given this some momentum, if I could use that phrase, and it's important that local government and local politicians communicate that sort of drive, and I think Andy Stamp needs to be highly commended. It was probably quite a difficult task to get this through a Conservative-run council, which he successfully did. And we're community leaders, or we're nothing, and I think it's a great success.
I mean, it did remind me a little bit of kind of London Labour boroughs in the 1980s, declaring themselves nuclear-free zones,
Yes, I know, but I think that's a rather
cynical view, isn't it?
Well, no, it's a facile analogy, really, because London boroughs didn't actually have any control over nuclear weapons.
Well, exactly, that's why it was a bit of a...
But we do have, Medway Council does have control over its procurement and whatever it's going to buy and whatever plastic it's going to buy. So when it does that, it is giving a signal to other businesses that is well, the right
that's interesting. I don't know whether it extends to contractors and subcontractors, commissioned by the authority to provide services. Do you think they ought to if they're not?
I think if you're going to take it seriously, that will be the next step. You've got to get your contractors and subcontractors, if you've got to contract everything out, to abide by the rules that you set down as a council. Otherwise, it's a sham.
I mean, it doesn't have much. It's not underpinned by any legislation. This is just the council policy.
It is a council position, and I think Andy Stamp was saying it's important that he sees it through, because I could see some backsliding by the Conservatives on this.
OK, well, thanks for that. Now, with the clock ticking towards March 2019, senior Labour figures headed to Dover on a fact-finding mission, a visit that coincided with a day of strike action and unrest in Calais with burning tyres. And the Shadow Secretary for exiting the EU, KIER STARMER, revealed that Labour did not support any further plans for a huge lorry park off the M20. Here's what he had to say.
I think it's a really bad idea to start big lorry parks when you don't need them. What we need is the efficient dispatch of work here at Dover, and that's what the authorities are trying to do. Brexit throws up a huge challenge to that, because the government said, wrongly I think, that they want to sweep a customs union and a single market off the table. They're not to be options for the future. Well, if they're off the table, that's going to cause huge problems here. The government needs to get a grip of this and come up with some answers for those that are working here and for the businesses that are using this to export to the EU.
Well, Roger Truelove, Keir Starmer's called it a really bad idea, and I'm guessing that you would endorse that view. But the question is, what is the actual solution?
Well, the problem with any solution is that we're in such a state of uncertainty. And we don't know what the impact of whether we're in the customs union.
Well, we know lorries have got to get through Dover.
Yeah, yes, we do. But we're also uncertain about the future road structure in Kent and the bifurcation of Kent and the impact of the A2 and whether the Lower Thames crossing is going to happen. So you could well spend quite a lot of money establishing sites which in the end won't really be the most appropriate place. So one single site on the basis of current traffic movements isn't very sensible. A number of sites in future, but we need to know where we are, and we need to know where we are and the impact of the customs union.
Well, Mike Baldock, the government has a slightly nuanced response when it ditched this lorry park. It said it's searching for another site, so it obviously hasn't given up on the idea.
Yeah, that's a shame, isn't it?
Well, I better not say.
I think they ought to just face the fact one lorry park in Kent isn't going to answer all the problems that we've got with HGVs in lay-bys all over Kent. They've got to look at another solution. And I do think there's a lot of scaremongering about what's going to happen later down the line. We had lorries coming in for long before there was freedom of movement. It worked perfectly fine then. Perhaps we ought to be looking at trying to reopen some of our other ports.
OK, well, one MP from Kent raised the issue of infrastructure and transport in the county, and it was the ASHFORD MP. The ASHFORD MP, Damian Green, was making his first question at PMQs after his sacking as Deputy Prime Minister. Here's what he had to say.
Thank you. It's a lot easier asking them than answering them. It's vital for long-term prosperity that the government maintains infrastructure investment. With this in mind, and especially as proposals for new bridges are currently fashionable, can I ask the Prime Minister to commit the government to a very practical idea, which is an early start on the Lower Thames crossing between Kent and Essex, which would create up to 5,000 jobs, relieve pressure on the motorway network, and provide a significant boost to the economy of the whole eastern side of England?
Mike, interesting that Damian Green chose to raise an issue about infrastructure, not actually in his constituency, but in the constituency of some of his colleagues. Do you think he's trying to build a few bridges there himself on a personal level?
Probably. Sounds like he needs a few. But I just think it's ironic that they're spending so much money on this atrocious, environmentally destructive project of the crossing of the Thames, when actually we need so much money pumped into the quality and the state of the roads in Kent. It would be nice that you'd be able to fly over this new bridge, but you'd probably knack your car up getting there.
Roger, I mean, are you keen on an early start to the Lower Thames crossing?
Yes, and I noticed that he got just a load of waffle from the Prime Minister.
Well, that's the Prime Minister's job, isn't it?
And if he'd briefed her about the question, he certainly didn't get the answer he wanted. I can see, in line with the answer I gave you just a few moments ago, that there is a link between his interest in Lower Thames crossing and being the ASHFORD MP and what the future road movements are likely to be in Kent. because if there's much more use of the A2 link using the Lower Thames crossing, then the impact on Ashford and the M20 might be much less, and the need for Operation STAT might be a lot less. So I think it was quite a cute question, and I found the answer quite disturbing, because the economy of Kent desperately needs infrastructure investment.
Okay. Well, thanks for that. Now, there are some politicians who divide opinion equally, and Margaret Thatcher was certainly one of those. And it was her divisiveness which appears to have put paid to plans for a statue of her in London. Here's what people in Rochester thought about the idea.
A lot of her people, that she did make a lot of people rich, I think, you know, when she privatised everything. So I suppose that's why they wanted to remember her, you know, but no, not in my books, I'm afraid.
Yeah, I can't see why she shouldn't be remembered by a statue, because, I mean, she was a very strong politician, and she stood up for what she believed with the Falklands, which I was for. I know she had her bad points, but then again, they all do, especially nowadays.
When I think of Margaret Thatcher, she does represent a certain strength in the political sort of areas, and how women can actually be portrayed, and how we should give them a little bit more slack in today's economic climate.
They could put a statue up there, but not a permanent one. Say for a couple of years, and then change it for somebody else. You know, she was quite a memorable person, but quite often not for the right reasons.
She was very good for the country to begin with, but then I don't know, things seem to go awry a bit. Yes, I think sometimes people are in power for a bit too long.
Well, Margaret Thatcher was, in my opinion, a very good Prime Minister. And like Winston Churchill, I think she does deserve a statue.
Roger, it seems a bit harsh, doesn't it, not to permit this statue to go up? You know?
Oh, no, I think in your introduction you actually hit the right word, a divisive Prime Minister. I know some people think she was one of the best Prime Ministers we've ever had, and some people equally think that she was one of the worst.
But I mean, the council said it was worried about vandalism. And that's a very poor reflection on, you know, society, isn't it?
No, it isn't. She was a very divisive figure, and she's still a divisive figure for many people. I know many mining communities felt extremely bitter about her impact, and her impact on manufacturing was very damaging. I think it would be unwise to elevate her to an understanding that, you know, she was recognised as a great national figure by everybody. By some she certainly was, but she's not a Churchill, she's not a Lloyd George, she's not even a Harold Wilson.
Who would you like to see on a plinth? Nigel Farage, I'm guessing.
Absolutely, yes, because he's the one who's actually bringing back a bit of power to Westminster. Whilst the rest of them are trying to give it away.
Roger, what about Saddam Hussein? What about having Jeremy Corbyn next to Margaret Thatcher,
Well, Jeremy Corbyn is yet to be the Prime Minister. It may not be very long before he is, but I think you need to have established a strong record and some enduring impact on the country, and her impact was a damaging one.
Okay, well, thank you both for coming in. That's all from us here at Paul on Politics. Thanks to our guests for coming into the studio. We'll be back soon. In the meantime, you can watch all the latest news on KentOnline.co.uk. Have a good night.